The Crow by Florence Merriam. Coffee Break Collection 37. More Birds. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The despised crow is one of our most interesting birds. His call is like the smell of the brown furrows in spring. Life is more sound and wholesome for it. Though the crow has no song, what a variety of notes and tones he can boast. In vocabulary, he is a very Shakespeare among birds. Listening to a family of Frenchmen, though you don't know a word of French, you easily guess the temper and drift of their talk, and so it is in listening to crows' tone, inflection, gesture, all betray their secrets. One morning last October, I caught in this way a spicy chapter in crow family discipline. I was standing in a meadow of rich aftermath, lying between a stony pasture and a small piece of woods, when a young crow flew over my head, cawing softly to himself. He flew straight west, toward the pasture for several seconds. Then, as if an idea had come to him, turned his head and neck around in an intelligent crow fashion, circled back to the woods, lit, and called vociferously to 3 other crows till they came over across the pasture. After making them all circle over my head, perhaps merely as a blind, he took them back to his perch where he wanted them to go beach nutting or something else. Whatever it was, they evidently scorned his childishness, for they flew back to their tree across the field as fast as they had come. This put him in a pet, and he would not budge, but sat there sputtering like a spoiled child. To everything he said, whether in complaining or teasing tone, the same gruff paternal call came back from the pasture. "Come along," it seemed to say. To this the refractory son would respond, "I won't." They kept it up for several minutes, but at last paternal authority conquered, and the big boy, making a wide detour, flew slowly and reluctantly back to his family. He lit on a low branch under them, and when the father gave a gruff, "I should think it was time you came," he defiantly shook his tail and cleaned his bill. After a few moments he condescended to make a low, half-sullen, half-subdued remark, but when the family all started off again he sat and scolded some time before he would follow them, and I suspect he compromised matters then only because he did not want to be left behind. The intelligence of the crow Leas become a platitude, but when we hear of his cracking clams by dropping them on a fence, coming to roost with the hens in the cold weather, and in the case of a tame crow, opening a door by lighting on the latch, his originality is a surprise. A family near here had much merriment over the gambols of a pet crow named Jim. Whenever he saw the gardener passing to and fro between the house and garden, he would fly down from the trees, light on his hat, and ride back and forth. He liked to pick the bright blossoms, particularly pansies and scarlet geraniums, and would not only steal bright-colored worsted and ribbons, but tear all the yellow covers from any novels he came across. When any one of them went to the vegetable garden, he showed the most commendable eagerness to help with the work, being anxious to pick whatever was wanted, from raspberries and currants to little cucumbers gathered for pickling. The sight of the big black puppy waddling along, wagging high in air a long black tail, incongruously finished off with a tipping of white hairs, was too much for Jim's sobriety. Down he would dive, give a nip at the hairs, and be gravely seated on a branch, just out of reach by the time Bruno had turned to snap at him. Let the puppy move on a step, and down the mischief would come again, and so the two would play sometimes for more than half an hour at a time. Then again the joke would take a more practical turn, for instead of flying overhead when Bruno looked back, Jim would steal the bone the puppy had been gnawing. The crow was happy as long as any one would play with him, and never tired of flying low over the ground with the string dangling from his bill for the children to run after. Another favorite play was to hold on to a string or small stick with his bill while someone lifted him up by it as a baby is tossed by its arms. He would even hold on and let you swing him around your head. He was never daunted, and when the toddling 2-year-old would get too rough in her play and strike at him with her stick, he would either catch the hem of her pinafore and hold on till she ran away, or would try scaring her, rushing at her, his big black wings spread out and his bill wide open. One day his pluck was thoroughly tested. Hearing loud calls of distress coming from the lawn, the gardener rushed across and found Jim lying on his back, his claw tightly gripping the end of one of the wings of a large hawk that, surprised and terrified by this turn of the tables, was struggling frantically to get away. Jim held him as tight as a vice and only loosened his grasp to give his enemy into the gardener's hands. After letting go, he submitted to the victor's reward, letting his wounds be examined and his bravery extolled while he was carried about, wearing a most consciously heroic air, it must be confessed, for due celebration of the victory. End of The Crow by Florence A. Merriam.